You ready?
I was born ready.
Hello and welcome to TheBlockBusters, a podcast about the wonderful world of cinema and TV. This is a podcast about the movies we love, no matter how big, no matter how small. My name is Rado, and I'm here with Conor. Hey, Conor.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very good. Happy New Year.
It's a new year, and it is.
Yes.
Well, is it happy? Well, it remains to be seen. Dr. Dre is in the hospital with a brain aneurysm, so far, we're like teetering on the edge.
Yeah, and we're also watching, actually, what's happening right now in the US is the democracy is being undone.
Pretty much.
With whatever's happening. We're not the news podcast, but I think for a minute, I had this thought that the transition between 20 and 21 was just numbers for us. But I think it was just like the moment in Tenet when they go through the mirror and they just start going back in time. So I think by the November, December, we'll be back to a world when there was no virus. So we just have to undo the year. And
I'm with you.
Rewind ourselves.
Yeah, I'm with you now. Yeah, we're all. What are they called? The machines again? I should know. I watched this movie like a week ago. I can't remember what they're called. Good movie.
No one remembers how they're called. But you have to watch it again. It's just essentially that's what needs to happen.
Yes, that's right.
And I mentioned Tenet. This is one of the films from 2020. And this is one of the 2 episodes we're going to do when myself and Conor will review 2020. Movie-wise and TV-wise. This is the episode that we will discuss movies. But before we start, just a quick reminder where to find us. We have a website. It's really nice. It's really beautiful. It's really airy and bright. It's TheBlockBusters.net. We are also on Twitter at BlockbustersPod, at Rado Folta, at @DesignConor. We have our Letterboxd account, the TheBlockBusters. Also, Conor has its non-active Letterboxd account, CNRBYL, and I'm as radox. And since Conor has been back to cinema recently, he might start posting again, hopefully.
Yeah, I know. So I tell you what it is with Letterboxd, right, that I really want. And
it's great.
I have emailed them about this maybe 2 or 3 times. I want them to give me the ability to switch accounts. Like, because I have the Blockbusters account logged in on my phone, but I want my own one as well. I would use it. But it's like logging out and logging in every single time is just not something I want to do. So I wish I could just tap on your user and switch accounts. I haven't checked in 6 months if this feature is available. I bet I have just continued to ask him to add it. So it might be there. Yeah. But last I checked, it wasn't.
That would be a great feature, I think, for anyone who's kind of running something like that, Letterboxd. And I really love Letterboxd. This is like the year for me has been switching from doing the spreadsheet, which I always did and shared with my girlfriend. I switched to Letterboxd, and she is furious about it because she doesn't go to Letterboxd. She doesn't actually check that. But for me, it was an incredible change, and I will tell you about my statistics in a minute. But it's been great. I mean, if you like movies and if you look for a community, if you're looking for a community that helps you to maybe just kind of find thoughts about movies and focus it on one thing, not like Twitter on everything or Instagram, whatever. This is only on films, and I love it. I enjoy it so much.
Yeah, sexy kind of boring. That was the last.
Sexy
kind of boring. Great review of Mike.
Yes.
But yeah, this is our kind of best movies of 2020 episode. So I'm looking forward to kind of going back through this list with you, because I some of them you just forget, right? You're probably better at it than I am because you keep like a record of it, and I don't tend to do it. So it is something I'm going to try going forward, is to kind of make a better note of what I have watched, because I have a very sort of like, shotgun approach to watching stuff. It's just so scattered. Like this last week, I've watched the Hobbit trilogy, for example, and I never wanted to watch those movies again, but here I am. And just 2 days ago, I was rewatching The Godfather. So I have the real tendency to just like watch stuff all the time, just random things. But then that does mean that when I look back through like the release list of the year, I'm like, oh yeah, I missed a lot of these, or I seen more of them than I thought. So I'm looking forward to going back through the list of stuff and kind of revisiting briefly some of the stuff that we talked about way earlier last year, kind of like March time, I guess, as we headed into our first lockdown, and yet here we are. We're right back in it again, both of us. How about
Exactly.
that?
Yeah.
Woo!
Conor, before the whole situation happened last year, 2020, in March, like you said, the lockdown. Before that, my life in terms of logging movies was very simple. Release in the specific year where the movie released in a cinema. And that's what I would categorize. And then maybe you would have 2 or 3 films that never actually went to theaters and they were released like in Netflix or Amazon. And if they were good enough, they would land on the list. Most of the time, they were not good enough. And they were kind of like fillers. You can always skip them.
Yeah.
But this year has been, obviously, as we know, has been completely crazy. And I started logging my films when I was going and watching them in the theater, and I was, quite a lot of them. Then suddenly that stopped. But for me, this didn't stop me from watching movies, And I look at my list, and I couldn't believe I've watched 455 movies last year.
How's that even possible? There's like 365 days.
Yes, I know. And this is the year. This is the year when I didn't go to 3, 4, or 4 film festivals. I went to 1 film festival in Venice, and then I did 2 online film festivals, and that's it. But I've watched 455 movies. Probably I missed a couple. But these are not only the new releases, but these are like movies altogether. So I maybe watch something from the 70s, like something from previous years. These are all the movies I watched, and I log them like, I'm a little bit anal about it.
Just a little bit, yeah.
Just a little bit.
Like I logged onto our document today, and you had all of the notes done of like all of the releases. And I was like, well, saves me having to do that.
There is a great website I use called Launching Films, and they have like all the release, but they only have the cinema release. So I have to go to different places to find like Netflix release, Amazon release, HBO release, or Sky or whatever that is. And it's just like, this is too much work right now.
Yeah.
And so this has been like, I've never seen in like, as long as I've been logging films, 455 movies. It's been about 390 last year. This year, in 2020, I've went through the roof. The statistics went through the roof. And I think it's partially because of the lockdown, because I had more time. I didn't have to spend so much time traveling. So I would still go to work. I mean, sitting here, but then I would not have to spend an hour and a half traveling or 2 hours. I could just, sit down and watch a film and then watch another one. So that kind of speeded up. So that was great for me. And in terms of the quality, there was many releases in the UK, probably more than I have on my list, but I've seen 159 of them. 159 movie releases, and also the streaming releases as a feature films. So the way I look at my list is always like the movie that needs to be released in the UK between January the 1st and December 31st. So this could be a movie that I've seen in 2019 in a film festival in Cannes, but I would never count it like as my best of 2019 because it wasn't released officially to the people. I don't think it's fair, to give you, so my film of the year is like in 2019 said is Parasite, because no one have seen this movie except for 15 people that went to Cannes or went to film festivals. So did you look on your kind of like releases the same way as well?
Yeah, I did. Like for me, like Jojo Rabbit was an example of that. Jojo Rabbit was a 2019 release technically, but it didn't arrive here until 2020. So
1st of January actually, or 3rd of January. It just opened at the very beginning of the year.
Yeah, definitely. I remember it. I remember it I think I've seen it twice actually in the cinema. So it's funny because it feels so long ago when you think back to it. But I kind of took the same approach, and 160 new releases is impressive, because I did say to you earlier today, there hasn't been as many, but that is, my brain is just, when I scan back through to think of theatrical releases, there just wasn't that many of them for obvious reasons. So when I started to kind of parse through the list, I was like, actually there is a lot of stuff that is released this year. And I tend to gravitate towards like the bigger must-see titles, whereas you obviously kind of go kind of down the rabbit hole and see a lot of things that wouldn't ever really get wide releases. So there's no point in like me. Like I was like, maybe I could compete and try and beat him this year. I was like, that's never going to happen. No way. You know, like I watched Emma was it last year? I was like, whoo, that is my indie thing done for the year. You know.
Oh,
so yeah.
I mean, it's great. You know, like you could also kind of like being at home. You probably would not go to the cinema to watch Emma, right? But I kind of bullied you into watching it because it was a for free on movie for one day, and I remember I was like, just watch that movie, and you did it. I was like super happy that we could discuss something, you know, that's actually my universe rather than yours.
Yeah. Well, the thing for me too, quite specifically this year, like one of the things I was looking forward to when we moved into the house that we're in now is that there are two cinemas within like walking distance. One of them was like a sort of big regular sort of like Cineplex, like had all the kind of big like blockbusters, and then the other one is the Queen's Film Theatre, the QFT, which shows a lot more independent movies, and both of those are literally like within like a 15-minute walk from where I live. And then the big Cineplex closed permanently. It had been due to close anyway because the building was bought over by like a Deloitte, I think it was actually, that bought it over. I can't remember exactly. And then QFT obviously just had to close alongside everyone else. So the two things that I kind of wanted to do, which was go to both of these places a lot more. As a matter of fact, like when I looked at the releases for the year, my January and February were like a lot of stuff I had seen, like, you know, like Uncut Gems and Parasite and everything was all in that time frame. Because both of these places were so close to me that I could go and see them. And I was going, like, I think I went 3 times maybe in 1 week, which for me was quite a lot. That was in January, I think. And I would have probably kept that pattern up if it not had been for what ended up happening. So that definitely, for me, limited seeing a lot more movies that I probably would have taken the risk to. Because I find when I go to watch something from home, there is a little bit of, you know, like a choice paralysis. Or I find myself endlessly scrolling through things, unable to decide what to watch. Even if something is new and I'm like, oh, that is on my list to watch, I go, maybe not tonight. Yeah. Whereas when I go to the cinema, it's like, I'll get this ticket and there's only like 2 other things playing. Like I'm going to go to the cinema. That's why I'm out of the house, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like, well, there's only 3 things playing and 2 of them I'm not interested in. And this other one I'm kind of interested in, so I'm going to go see that one. Or, I'm interested in all 3, so I'm going to make the time to go see all of them. So yeah, it was a very interesting year for movie releases in general. And, you know, we've talk briefly about what this year's going to look like, and it is hard to tell.
Yeah, definitely hard to tell. So Conor, I'm going to quickly take us back in time to the June. Mm-hmm. Not taking us to January anymore. Taking us to June, and when we kind of had quick glimpse on what we liked so far in 2020. We had our short lists, and I had Never Rarely, Sometimes Always, Uncut Gems, and Dark Waters on my list. And you mentioned Jojo Rabbit, 1917, and then The Invisible Man. And these were like our small choices. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I'm kind of curious what actually stayed there on your list. And as you said, because there was not that many new movies that you managed to watch towards the end of the year. I got a feeling a couple of those films actually are on your list towards the very top. So how big is your list?
I didn't come to a final number the way you did with like how many you have actually watched, but I am keeping mine limited to the way I'm approaching it. Maybe it's slightly different to you, but I'm doing it as these are the 5 things that I would absolutely recommend that you see, plus some honorable mentions from 2020. So if you're looking for a list of recommendations of things that you might have missed last year, that you can look through this. Some of them you might have seen, some of them might go, oh, do you know what? I skipped over that one. Let me go check out this one. It's not necessarily like an ordered top 5, like this one is better than this one. It's just like these are the 5 that I think everyone should see from last year. And my, like, if you have interests similar to mine, these are the 5 that you should see. And these are some honorable mentions that I really, really liked and could have easily been within that 5. But, I would say that these other ones just are a little bit more interesting. Whereas I know you, on the other hand, have like limiting down 150 or 60 movies to 5 would be an impossible task. Like, I think you should have done it.
I tell you.
But
oh my God, Conor.
Getting it down to what, 10? Are you going with 10 and maybe some honorable mentions?
My God, yeah, I'll do that. I mean, because I don't want us to be talking about this for too long, but there was so many great movies. And, every time I do a list, I look at this list a few days after and I think to myself, no, this movie should be absolutely higher, or this movie should be in that top 10. But I think I'm quite happy with what the 10 is, and very similar to you. Maybe tomorrow my number 10 would move to 5, or my number 5 would move to 1. No, 1 actually is gonna stay where it is, or maybe 2 first movies I've got, like, I'm super happy with them. The rest of the movies are like, they are the creme of the creme of the choices. And so if you have 5, I will quickly go through my 5 films, so from 10 to 6, and you can do honorable mentions if you want to.
Yeah, okay. That's fine.
Let's do it. So my number 10, so I put the movie there that's familiar to you, and you mentioned it a few minutes ago. It's Emma, Pablo Larraín's Chilean movie with Mariana Di Girolamo and Gal Garcia Bernal. Beautiful, crazy movie about the relationship, about the couple that is kind of testing their limits of their relationship, and about reggaeton. And until today, I can switch this movie at any moment and just keep watching it because I love the mood of that film, the cinematography of that film, and the music that's kind of flowing from that film. This is Emma. I mean, what else to say? Foreign film, something for me, right?
Yeah, exactly. I really, really enjoyed this movie, and it was very beautiful to look at. And, it's like, could I retell you the plot? Probably not, like, because there really wasn't much of one from what I remember. But one thing I could easily tell someone is, like, there's a scene with a flamethrower, and it's incredible, right? Like, that's it's like burned into your brain. No pun intended. It's just like the cinematography is astonishing in that movie.
Yeah, number 9, I've got the documentary. That's the only documentary in my top 10 list. This is The Painter and the Thief, the movie I've seen during the London Film Festival, and it was released not that long ago, actually. A very limited release as well. So even if before the lockdown started, this movie was essentially doomed. Probably no one have seen it, but I loved it. This is like a true story of an artist that befriends the person who has stolen her paintings, and the relationship starts developing. And this movie takes you on the path of discovery, of relationship with people, but also of how influential art can be. The best scene in that movie, when the guy who is a thief, is a drug addict, sees his portrait, and he starts crying, and it's so incredible. I love that movie from the beginning to an end, and if you can find it somewhere, please go and watch it. The Painter and the Thief. Number 8 is the Possessor, or Possessor, by Brandon Cronenberg. Movie I've watched twice this year. One during the film festival, and the second time I went to watch it in the cinema because I really wanted to experience the horror futuristic movie about mind heist. I told you about this film. This is a story when a person goes inside someone's brain and takes over the body and kills someone as a possessor. And this got Christopher Abbott, Jennifer Jason Leigh, and incredible Andrea Riseborough in the film. It's really bloody, it's really gory, it's really dark, and it's not a movie for everyone. I think most of the people would hate this film. Hate me for recommending it, but I think this is one of the most memorable movies of the 2020. It's called Shot Bean over there, and he's being almost killed. just a spoiler. Number 7, this is His House, and I'm quite surprised this movie got into my top 10. This is another horror film, Conor. This is the horror drama about the couple that escaped war-torn South Sudan. Then they ended up in the UK, and they live in a house when the ghosts of the past actually torment them. Incredible film, and that's what I'm going to say. This is on Netflix, and you can watch it. And I would not recommend something that kind of shook me to the core. And another one that's available on Netflix right now is Rocks, Sarah Gavron's movie. This is a story of teenager girls. That's like a grown kind of coming of age film set in the UK with very realistic roles of like girls who have never played in the movie. So the whole process of like selecting them was so interesting. Like she went to local communities, she found those girls who started essentially kind of bouncing off each other, and she put them in a film, and she created a film with them. That's a story of this girl that she's left by her mother, and she has to take care of her younger brother. I feel like I'm getting older, and I'm getting out of touch with what's happening with young people. And right now, especially in the UK, you don't understand teenagers. And this movie allows you to have a glimpse in their life, and it's such a life-affirming movie as well. And this is Rocks, and this is my number 6. Enough me talking. Conor, you want to mention a couple of films that didn't get into your top 5?
Yeah. No, I want to reiterate, all right, that these are not left out of it because I think that these are bad or undeserving of being in the top 5 or anything like that. They're just that the top 5 is representative of these are the things that I really enjoy and suit my tastes, and things that I would put it down to things I would rewatch. All right, that's how I kind of decide on something. All right, so first up, early movie, big movie at the start of the year, big surprise at the Oscars, which was Parasite.
This is not your number 1. This is your special mention. This is
my special mention, absolutely.
Oh,
exactly.
My God, Conor.
Exactly. All right, and again, I love Parasite. I thought Parasite was an excellent film, and I would highly recommend anybody watch Parasite. It's one of those movies, I don't think that you have to have any particular sort of like taste in any sort of film. I think that if you just enjoy watching movies and being told stories, Parasite is an excellent example of doing that. Especially when it's like of a culture or something like that you're not particularly privy to or aware of, and that kind of like insight into it. And it is the more that you kind of appreciate movies and the more you dig down into it, the more of a masterpiece you realize that it is. So I absolutely think Parasite is an incredible movie. It's just that out of the other movies here, there's just movies that I would be like, oh, you like, if I was chatting to my friends, I'd be like, oh, you're definitely going to watch this one. You can't miss it. Whereas some of them I'd be like, Parasite, I don't know if you'd enjoy it, right? Like, that's just the way it is. Okay, I'm a man of the people, Rado. Okay, I'm a man of the people.
No comment. Go on.
Next is a movie that I would, if you had asked me in January of last year, would it go into my list, I would have told you to fuck right off, and that is The Invisible Man. Just based on the title alone, I was like, sounds like a dumbass movie that I would not want to watch at all. However, it is a very cerebral movie. An incredible example of how to build tension in a movie with just nothing happening for like a lot of the scenes, right? I just remember that opening shot. You know going into it is the title of the movie, and the opening shot is just like a stationary camera on an empty room or an empty hallway, and you're not really sure, like, is something about to happen or is something already happening? Like, is there something here that like is already taking place? Is there a story being told, but I'm just not privy to it because, as the title suggests, there is an invisible man in this movie. But it gets a bit wild. It gets a bit silly throughout it, but I think it still does an excellent job of building tension throughout the movie and giving you like this good sort of like peaks and high points where crazy stuff happens that kind of like, gives you that adrenaline rush, and then goes back down the way and starts to slowly build its way back up again. It does a brilliant job of that. So yeah, The Invisible Man, that was for me, and Letterboxd love to keep reminding me in my Letterboxd rushes email that I get every week, the last movie that I entered into my personal Letterboxd account of last year. Up next, I would say The Five Bloods for me, another like really, really notable mention. I just thoroughly enjoyed it. I really loved the cutback between kind of present day and the past, and the way that they shot the sort of Vietnam scenes in the past and the sort of like 4:3 sort of camera style. And you obviously had Chadwick Boseman kind of in one of his sort of final roles, playing an excellent role in it as well, kind of being this sort of godlike character to the other people in the movie, right? He kind of plays this sort of like this like other being, which is very, very much fitting kind of after he had passed. But I really, really enjoyed this movie, and I thought it dealt with some really good themes as well, in terms of like how, you know, we know that we know that Spike Lee obviously is, you know, very much like liberal and sort of like left wing, and to have not only a character in the movie, but a black man in the movie who like proudly sort of wears the "Make America Great Again" hat, and is like very much like, you know, very much like racist or anti-immigrant. I thought that was such a very clever sort of an honest take on sort of like social issues now, is that there are people out there who do support things that causes that are detrimental to themselves and are self-destructive to them, and I don't think you see that all that often. I thought, like, you know, I wouldn't have expected it from Spike Lee. You'd almost expect him to make fun of a character like that, but instead he is a really well developed and interesting person the whole way throughout that movie, and suffers from a lot of issues in it as well, as do the rest of them. But I thought that was I think The Five Bloods for me is absolutely something that if you missed it in 2020, you should go back and watch. Absolutely killer soundtrack as well. So it does.
Yeah, absolutely.
And my last sort of honorable mention, one of our more recent ones, and we had a good full episode discussing it, which was Mank. Not because I thought it was the best movie in the world, but just purely down to how gorgeous it was. And if you have a good TV, and you have all of the bits and pieces that you need to watch it in Dolby Vision and everything else, it looks spectacular. It looks absolutely incredible, and it is a masterpiece of just cinematography and movie making from that point of view. I think personally, I thought it was a little bit too long, and the sort of subject of it wasn't something that overly interested me, but I've recommended it to several people who I know would just appreciate some movies for how they look or how they're made, and Mank certainly deserves credit for that. So yeah, Parasite, The Invisible Man, The Five Bloods, and Mank are my honorable mentions for the year. There's probably some others I could put in there, but at that point I was like, okay, then I'm just doing a top 10 list. So no.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you are one title short of top 10 list.
Yeah.
You could have easily added something you've watched. I don't know, Uncut Gems.
Yeah,
and that would have been,
honestly, Uncut Gems was like I thoroughly enjoyed it. Another movie in building tension, absolutely. But it's harder to recommend because it's like the moment you say Adam Sandler, everyone goes, oh no.
And that's why I think you should recommend that film. You know, this is one of the films that I had in my half a year summary, and then kind of gone away. And you know, my list, I've got like a waiting line over here to get into the top 10, which has like Uncut Gems, for example. It has The Lighthouse, which I loved when it premiered. This is the black and white movie with Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe, which I want to watch again. I've not rewatched it since Cannes. I've got Yes God Yes. You know, we were talking about this comedy. Yeah, I've got David Byrne's American Utopia over here. Personal History of David Copperfield, or Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. Dark Waters as well, and Calm with Horses. the movie you reviewed, and I was quite surprised you've actually went for it and purchased it as well online. So for me, like, it's super frustrating to see those movies that maybe require a little bit more love, and you say, oh, maybe I'm not gonna recommend it because people don't like Adam Sandler, but people should watch Uncut Gems because Adam Sandler is so good in this.
Yeah,
right?
You should. If you have anxiety, don't dodge it. Like, get right out of dodge with it, because that movie is killer.
Yeah, that's a movie that is better than 2 Red Bulls and a cup of coffee. I've got number 5. That's I've got actually a couple of British films here. No, one British film. I've got 1 American film, 2 American films, 1 Korean movie. Well, guess which one is it? And one is another French movie here as well. So my top 5 before let's start the countdown. Like I said, top 5 is like 5 films I feel like probably couldn't live without in 2020. Saint Maud, and this is the rose glass horror film with Mortified Clark. This is a movie that I've watched in 2019 in London during the London Film Festival. I didn't know anything about it. I went to watch Saint Maud. It's gonna be some sort of crappy film. My God, this movie stayed with me for so long. This is the movie that kind of is, the best movies are, it's never actually explained what's it about, and it's it does a lot of visual storytelling without explaining you stuff, and it creeps you out with little things, little takes, like camera skewed a little bit, the music in the background, the way the shot is composed. This movie is one of the most kind of chilling films, and I still kind of think about it, whether the ending, I'm not going to talk about the ending, but whether the ending is something that happens in real life, it's something happens in the mind of the main character in there, or it's completely bonkers. One of the most interesting British movies of last few years, and I wish it had kind of more time to flourish, but from what I've seen, the numbers, the people actually were watching it, and I've seen it actually being played in Spain as well. So super interesting film, Saint Maud. This is my number 5.
Dear God, your presence graces the air, and soon everyone will see.
Hi, are you Maud?
Yes, hi. It takes nothing special to mop up after the dying.
You're prettier than the last one.
But to save a soul, that's quite something. Bless Amanda's body, and bless her mind, which is shrouded in darkness.
When you pray, do you get a response?
Oh, it's like he's physically in me. It's how he guides me.
My little savior.
What's on your list on number 5, Conor?
Number 5, I'm going to go with Tenet. I think I'm a Christopher Nolan fan, and I like what Christopher Nolan attempts to do in his movies. I like the way that he views cinema and kind of film, as it were. So I feel like there's very few things that Christopher Nolan could make that aren't interesting to me. I feel like any topic he could just pluck out of there, and he's like, I'm going to make a movie about dog walkers and just people who walk dogs. And I'm like, all right, let's can't wait to see where this goes. Right? Kind of see what they're gonna like surprise us with at the end or whatever. So like I thought that Tenet is an excellent movie. It is difficult to understand, there is no doubt about it. And I can understand why. I don't know if you've kind of been paying attention much recently, because you were away and stuff, but it obviously just sort of released this last month digitally, so most people have now seen it, or people who, particularly in the US, who would have went to see it in the movie theaters, have only now seen it, and I think it's already live on HBO Max as well for streaming in the US too. So there's been a lot more, like all of a sudden there's been a lot more people talking about Tenet, and it has been such a mixed bag of reviews, because I think that some of the spectacle of Tenet is absolutely lost watching it at home. As we know, Nolan makes movies for a big screen. That's what he does. That's like his bread and butter. That's what he wants. So to see people being irritated at this movie, and it's simple things. Like I was listening to another podcast, for example, who were where they were talking about watching Tenet, and they mentioned how as they were watching it, they were doing a watch party with a friend, and they were texting throughout it. And they also then kind of mentioned that they didn't like understand certain parts of it or whatever. And that is the sort of thing that I feel like this is why Nolan wants you to go to a cinema to watch it, right? Because you sit in sort of silence and your attention is laser focused on that big screen in front of you. Yeah. There's so few, the chances of distraction are so low in a cinema compared to at home, where you're checking your phone and you're texting people or you're doing a watch party or whatever it is. Like, you know, we spoke about this I think earlier last year as well, like that, like the experience of watching a movie at home is different, and maybe that's why TV shows are kind of gaining as these incredible sort of stories that are being told, because they are keeping your attention for shorter periods of time and then letting you away to think about it and to mull it over. Whereas a movie, like even if you're watching it at home, it still has to keep you there for that kind of 2-hour mark, and that's can be very, very, very difficult to do. Whereas in a cinema, you don't really have as many options. So that is all to say that I think Tenet is a really, really fun and really, really interesting movie. I don't think I don't think you're meant to think really too much about it. It was meant to be a movie about spectacle and like crazy fun things happening and airplanes crashing into the side of like airport hangars and stuff like that. Like that's what it was meant to be. So to see it on a home screen where your attention is being pulled left, right, and center, and you can't even pay attention to the plot points that you're being told that are trying to string you along, it's just doing it a real disservice. I think if you've seen it in the cinema and you got that chance to watch it, like watching it at home, I bought it on iTunes and I loved watching it a second time. I got more out of it a second time.
Yeah.
But watching it for the first time, no matter how big your TV is, like, you know, it's going to take away from that experience that it was purely designed for. It's not his best movie by a long shot, but I still think I would absolutely put Tenet in you gotta see Tenet. Like, how could you be interested in watching movies and not watch Tenet?
Yeah, right. I watched this twice this year. Absolutely, I agree with you. Movie to watch in the theater, even if the sound isn't great in like if you can't hear the dialogue right now at home, switch the bloody subtitles on and you will get everything. Just pay attention to it, because if you don't pay attention, like in Prestige, you're gonna be fooled. Maybe you want to be fooled.
But I mean, yeah, there's literally a character in it that says, "Don't try to think about it.
Just feel it.
Just feel it."
Yeah.
Like it's just like don't like, and that is very much that part where you feel like Nolan is saying to the audience, like I'm telling you, don't think about it. I'm more aware than any of you that it is not meant to make much sense. And you can, like, you know, they could debate back and forth all day long whether that makes a good movie or not, but at the end of the day, I still, like, you know, you can tell by the difference in our lists and like on our watching habits. I still think that at the end of the day, like, a movie is there to entertain you and tell you a story. And that's all its job is at the end of the day, to entertain you and tell you a story. And if it can make you feel things along the way, like, all the better. But it should be entertaining. It shouldn't be like a 2-hour just like dragging you through like an alley full of broken glass, right? Because some like crazy art house director wants you to like think differently about like fireflies or something like that, right? And Nolan, I think, aligns very much with me, where it's like, no, like, this is spectacle. Like, we're here to like entertain and have people go, what? That's crazy. And I think Tenet does it. Don't think about it, just watch it. Feel it.
Yeah.
I gather you have an interest in a certain Russian national.
Mike's bring me in.
You really want to know? He
you communicate with the future?
Time travel.
No.
Inversion.
Aim it and pull the trigger. You're not shooting the bullet, you're catching it.
Whoa. Well, I've seen too much. Well, we'll try and keep up.
So this is Conor's sort of number 5 on the list. We moving forward to number 4, talking about dragging you through the alley full of glass for 2 hours. No, actually not this movie, but this is a film that I wanted to watch in a cinema. This was when the first lockdown kind of finished before the second started, but we never went to watch it. I think it played for 2 weeks maybe, and we lost it. And I discovered that it's actually available right now on Netflix, and I watched it. Conor, I cried my eyes out. And this is a film that I probably know where it's going from the very first minute of the setup, but the way it's told and the way it's going there, I was completely mesmerized. And it's a very small independent movie called San Francis, directed by Alex Thompson. We have Kelly Sullivan playing the main role, and she also is a scriptwriter on that film. Essentially, it's a story of this 30-ish something woman in the US that is kind of lost in life, and she's working as a waitress, and she's trying to get like this job that's gonna pull her through the summer, being a nanny for a 6-year-old girl. And also one of the kind of things that happen very quickly, she has an abortion, and that just happens. Like, it's not like, oh, whether she's gonna have an abortion or not, she just has an abortion, and she kind of goes through the life with whatever happened to her, and she befriends that little girl she's actually taking care of. And as you can probably imagine, there is a lot of stuff that they probably don't like each other. They maybe will like each other later on in the relationship. This girl is actually being raised by 2 women, so 2 mothers, and this is incredibly simple movie with very progressive thoughts in there that not being hammered into your head. That's one thing that kind of surprised me. Second one is, in a world today when everyone's divided and everyone's thinking about how am I different from another person, how can I kick your ass and be good to myself, but then you just kind of leave you in a ditch. This movie is about being good to other people as well, and this kind of took me apart completely. And this is another movie, another scene when the character says something and she starts crying, and you start crying with her because there's so much emotion that she's carried through the whole film. And this film is actually light and really funny. This is the combination of everything.
Sounds like it.
Like, it's a movie that's got very interesting thoughts about how to live your life, how to question things that happen to you, and how kids see us as well. I was in love with this film, and I was sitting there crying. Actually, I was crying. So, Conor, I don't cry a lot during the movies, but if the movie did this to me, wow, I'm super grateful for watching that. So this is San Francis. This is something that came to the cinemas like a meteor few weeks, and now we can watch it on Netflix. It's probably one of those films that people will not watch. That's why I want to put it on my list very, very high, because it's a film that deserves this attention. And it's like this little sugar you will, like a chocolate you will eat just to help your day to be better. It is not the healthiest thing. Maybe you will think, oh, maybe I shouldn't be doing it. And it's got everything. It's got a little bit of bitterness in it, but it's got... I love this film. We never reviewed it because I just watched it very, very recently, just before our list actually came up to life. So, San Francis, this is my recommendation for anyone. Cool. Come on, just watch this on Netflix, not other crap.
When you were a baby and you screamed and screamed and there was nothing I could do to get you to stop, I'd imagine taking you by the ankles and swinging your little head into the wall over and over until it was a bloody pulp.
Oh my God. I don't know that you should tell that story.
Conor, what's your number 4?
Number 4 for me is Sam Mendes' 1917.
Another big movie.
Yeah, another big movie for sure.
But
huge,
beautiful spectacle.
Yeah,
yes.
And again, like I can't deny the spectacle, right? I'm like a moth to a flame with it, so I am. I did rewatch this recently on Amazon Prime, and some of the things that kind of like bugged me the first time stuck out a little bit more the second time. So the movie, for anyone who isn't aware, is sort of filmed to appear as if it is all one continuous take. And it is a very linear story of like if these people who have to travel kind of across like the plains of World War One, essentially, and through the trenches and stuff like that to deliver a message. And I remember when I watched it the first time, I couldn't help but I couldn't help but look for the seams, right? I was looking for the points at where the things were stitched together, right? You're looking for it constantly. And when I watched it the second time, those stick out a little bit more because things feel a little bit more unnatural. Like there are sequences that happen then where you feel like something should have cut, but it doesn't cut. It continues on in an awkward sort of fashion. And I still think it's an excellent movie. Obviously, putting it onto this into my kind of like top 5 here, but there are like, I think if you're watching it for the first time, I think you'll really, really get a kick out of it. I think it's an excellent movie, and it's so gritty and heavy and realistic, and you can very much tell that it was a passion project for Sam Mendes. But if you're watching it a second or a third time, some of them start to show themselves a little bit more and lift you out of the experience of watching the movie. And my other kind of like criticism that I would level towards it is that by its kind of final third, it starts to become a little less interesting. That this is a spoiler. You can skip like, I guess, 30 seconds or a minute if you haven't watched it yet, but I felt like the movie should have kept the pair for longer, because it did an excellent job at the start getting us introduced to them and building a bond between them, and you really, really feel for when that sequence happens where one of them dies and becomes just one of them. But I would say that it should have went longer with the pair of them, because they were so good together and they had such a bond and such a friendship that I just enjoyed watching them kind of solve these puzzles as they made their way through trenches and fields and farmhouses and things like that. An excellent movie, beautifully shot, but it just, for me, there's just a few things that I would say, like maybe the whole like one shot sequence thing for an entire movie maybe should have like cooled it down a little bit on that. And I think why that for me is the point where they break that as it kind of turns to night, that sequence. They kind of fast forward at a point to get to nighttime, and it feels like it didn't need to, other than they just wanted it to have been nighttime at a certain point so that they could film some stuff at night, which looks amazing, right?
It's incredible. The night sequence is
it's very much like, it's Roger Deakins' cinematographer, and it's the same thing that he did in Skyfall. With the burning building at the end of Skyfall, where it's just the fire that's lighting the set. Like they just set this thing on fire and this will light the set. It's that here. They also have some like flares and stuff going off, or like explosives, which are giving like flashes of light. So it's just a stunningly beautiful movie to watch, and I think that's why I would put it on my list. Plus, I'm a sucker for a good war movie too. So.
You have a brother in the 2nd Battalion.
Yes, sir.
They're walking into a trap. Your orders are to deliver a message, calling off tomorrow morning's attack.
If you fail, it will be a massacre.
Let's talk about this for a minute.
Why?
We've got orders to cross here.
That is the German front line.
If we're not clever about this, no one will get to your brother. I will.
There's only one way this ends.
Yeah, I'm not going to discuss that one. I think you going through your list backwards, but you started with Tenet. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to add another lovely film to my list. And this one is kind of on topic with St. Francis because it has abortion in there. Mm-hmm. And it's set in the US. And it's got the teenagers, in this case, actually teenagers kind of traveling to New York City to get the help with the unintended pregnancy. And it's called Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always. I talked about it in one of the episodes, so I'm not going to talk about it that much. Eliza's Hitman movie that broke me absolutely, and it's such a devastating film. It's actually the opposite of what's going on in San Francisco, because San Francisco has got like this very light and warm tone. This doesn't have this light and warm tone, but it talks to you on a different level of emotions. And you see that, you know, people in countries or people in general make politicians or men make some rules that other people need to obey, and despite they have nothing to do with it, they have nothing to say, don't understand the situation, they end up kind of putting people in situations like the situation we see, Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always. It's a film that resonated with me as well because of what's happening in Poland, all the protests of women against the decision of the parliament, of the president and everyone like in the government to make the abortion even less possible to protect your life, even make choices. And this is a movie that is not about exactly that, but actually is about making a choice and being a teenager in this society, how hard it is. And it's a heartbreaking movie, fantastically filmed, very, very toned in color. Yeah. But it's got so many beautiful sequences, like the karaoke scene when the character that's very quiet, that's kind of down, she goes there and she sings her heart out. Oh, it's a beautiful film. Again, one of those films I want to really put your attention to and watch it. And Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always. That's my number 3.
Autumn? Who came with you today?
My cousin.
This is the most magical sound you will ever hear.
I'm just not ready to be a mom.
Where else could you go?
Nowhere in Pennsylvania.
I think you should try another place.
What's your number 3, Conor?
I went with Trial of the Chicago 7 for my next one.
Boo. Sorry, that's not me. That's other people booing. Okay.
I really enjoyed this movie. I watched
I remember it. You wanted to give it like 7 stars out of 5.
Yeah.
And
I watched it twice in the space of like 2 or 3 days, I think. So that is obviously a markup for me of like what I really enjoy in movies. I think just the performances were incredible across the board. The judge, for example, who I just recently realized was Skeletor in Masters of the Universe. And it is I've thoroughly enjoyed this movie. It's a sort of like a political courtroom drama, I guess, which as we're speaking, and the sort of the US is kind of going into meltdown on Capitol Hill at the minute. It's a very fitting movie, I thought, for this year. I remember saying to you about how like 2020 very much felt like sort of like the 60s or 70s kind of condensed into like a space of a year where, you know, you had like all these sort of like sort of like culturally significant moments and like huge shifts in attitude and to sort of like civil rights, and this movie kind of went back and captured a lot of that really, really well, and told a really, really interesting story about something that I wasn't particularly privy to, written and directed by Aaron Sorkin.
Unfortunately, yes, yeah.
And it is very much Sorkin. Like, it's Sorkin all over. It feels like Sorkin is just pouring out of this movie for sure. But I do enjoy his like the sort of Sorkinisms that like fast talking, intelligent people. Like, you know, the movie doesn't really slow down to kind of check that you're okay and you understand the plot, but it's written in a way that there isn't really anything too complicated that you might miss over at the same time, right? Like, it's easy enough to keep up with, but it's like, oh, these are all intelligent people having really fast conversations, which at the end of the day, like, I feel like is a huge part of writing a script, right? Because like, you can't have a conversation between two people that is reflective of a real life conversation, because real life conversations can last hours on their own, and you got to condense it down to maybe a handful of scenes or a handful of minutes. And that's where the sort of skill of screenwriting for me kind of comes in, because you have to be able to not only condense all of this information down into something that the audience can like understand without beating them over the head or spoon feeding it to them. But you also have to make it feel real. Like, people have to be able to, like, you know, they have to feel like they're real people having a conversation. And I do like the way that Sorkin in this movie and in a lot of his other work is really good at making these people feel like they are real people having real conversations. They're just very intelligent and very quick-witted, right? And like, it feels like any of these people you could speak to and they would talk to you like that, and you might just be like, I am stupid, like, you know. But while they're talking to each other and you get to watch it through like a pane of glass, it's like, oh, this is fascinating and interesting to watch. So I do like this movie, and I certainly again would think, similar to the other two movies, like, this for me is something that like I would recommend my friends watch. Like, you gotta check this movie out. Like, if you liked West Wing, if you even liked The Social Network, like, this is something you're going to get enjoyment out of watching. So yeah, The Trial of the Chicago 7.
We want to underscore again that we're coming to Chicago peacefully, but whether we're given permits or not, we're coming.
We're going to Chicago to protest the Vietnam War.
And there's no place to be right now but in it.
We watched for a decade while these rebels without a job tell us how to prosecute a war. Because they're going to spend their 30s in a federal facility, real time.
People say, you know, Abby, are you concerned about an overreaction from the cops?
Holy shit.
You all right?
I was until I saw that.
Are the people ready to make opening arguments?
Can you do me a favor and just say Mangrove?
Mangrove.
Okay, I'm gonna copy and paste it instead of Trial of Chicago 7.
That's fair.
That's gonna be a better choice. That's gonna be a better choice than the Trial of Chicago 7. I don't agree with you, but this is your list, and I respect that. Absolutely, this movie doesn't deserve to be anywhere near. And you left out Parasite, which actually is my number 2.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna swiftly go to the first South Korean film to win Palme d'Or in Cannes, and the first non-English language film to win Academy Award for the Best Picture. When, you know, it was beginning of 2020 and we saw this happening, we thought to us, the world has changed forever.
What a year it's gonna be!
What a year! What a year to be alive. 2 weeks later, we are fucked. But yeah, this movie, I don't. You mentioned it, and I'll say this. I watched this movie this year twice, and I watched it for the first time in Cannes 2019, and I still think it's a movie to recommend to people to go beyond the barrier of subtitles, because this movie is bigger than this. It's not about, it's a foreign film. It's an actually genius film, thrilling, funny, dark, broody, incredibly smart, and it tells us so much about the society we live in. The division between the poor and the wealthy, and it's not a strictly political film, but it's got so much. This movie is so universal. I probably would put it as number one, if not the other film I have there. But this film you have to watch. You really need to watch, and it's right now on Amazon Prime in black and white. If you like to treat yourself, just the regular version is still beautiful as well.
Yeah,
and that's my number two, Bong Joon-ho's Parasite.
Yeah, definitely watch Parasite. I 100% agree. My number two is a movie we have not yet reviewed. It is one that came out right at the very end of the year, Christmas Day.
Wonder Woman 1984!
Boy,
yes!
Words to say about that movie, and we're going to keep it for another episode. So we are, because I'm not letting
So it's not Wonder Woman.
It's not Wonder Woman.
Most beautiful blockbuster of 2020.
It is Pixar's Soul, which I adored. I adored this movie. And I knew it from the first 5 minutes into watching it. I hadn't really seen many trailers or anything like that. I've maybe a few screenshots here and there, a few clips or something like that, but nothing, no excitement for this movie, nothing. And I just seen that it was on there, and I was like, hey, I like jazz, I like Pixar. This seems like two things, and I've got time, so I was like, this seems like something I want to watch. I just thought that this movie was spectacular. It is Pixar's first with very much around black culture and having a lead person of color. Well, no, I guess they have a person of color with Coco and stuff like that. But in terms of a lead black person, I think this is the first time Pixar has really done anything even remotely close to that. And it is all about jazz as well, so very much leaning into that culture as well. And it is, I can't even really find the words for it, to be honest with you. It's just such a delightful movie to watch. I rewatched it again. I watched it, and then 2 days later, I think I said to Anya hey, I watched Soul the other night. You gotta watch it. Trust me, you're gonna enjoy it. She, very much the same, knew nothing about it, and it is wonderfully paced. I think, like I said, within that sort of first 5 or 10 minutes, you really get the sense of the characters, and then you're kind of introduced to the sort of the other side of the movie, which is such a stark contrast in terms of its color and its tone and everything, because the sort of the stuff that's happening in the real world. I'm trying to dodge, by the way, giving anything away about this movie if you can't tell.
I can see you tiptoeing around it.
Very, anything very slowly. The main parts are the sort of start of the movie is in New York City. And then the other parts of it take place on another plane, shall we say. And you're introduced to this within the first few minutes of the movie. It's not really a big spoiler or anything like that, but I'm trying to avoid giving away too much about it. The voice acting is brilliant. There's a few surprises in there. Graham Norton shows up at one point, which I did not expect whatsoever, and I thought that was really good fun. It is stunning to look at. Absolutely gorgeous movie. So it is.
Agree, yes.
And at one point I was deeply worried watching it, because we start off in New York City, and I'm just please don't leave this what you've got going on right now. And then they do, and it is equally as incredible. But I remember thinking, I really wanted to see more of Pixar doing a real city, because we don't see it all that much. Everything that they do is kind of otherworldly in a lot of ways, and getting to see them do a city, and never mind it being Manhattan, was amazing. And I just loved every sequence that we've seen as the kind of characters sort of explore around the city and get introduced to humanity through all of these little story beats, little small things that happen as they kind of make their way around on this sort of wacky adventure that they're on. And then very much like probably one of my other favorite Pixar movies, which is Ratatouille, which is the only other time that you see like a sort of living, like real world city in a Pixar movie. And again, very, very beautiful in it as well when you're in Paris. But they have this sequence in Ratatouille, if you remember, when they eat the food and the screen goes dark. And you see the little like bursts of color and stuff, and how they kind of capture like the taste of food through color. And this movie does something similar, but with music, and specifically jazz music, and they refer to it as kind of like when an artist gets into their flow. And the way that they captured that was just so wonderful. And that sequence in the movie where where we kind of see him first get into the flow is just amazing. So very much a beautiful movie, a wonderfully tight script, filled with, I think, like some incredible sort of like cultural stuff. Again, like probably way too late for Pixar to be doing something like this. But I think they did an incredible job doing it here. So have you seen Soul?
I've seen Soul, yes. Not gonna be too long about it. I enjoyed it, and I agree with everything you're saying. The only thing I was kind of skeptical about it is it gonna be one of those animations that, you know, the adults will like, and the kids will not get or will not care about? But 2 days after that thought, I watched this movie with my 8-year-old nephew, and he was just glued to the screen. He was excited. He was dancing in front of, like, what's gonna happen? You know, there are some kind of like sequences when exciting stuff happens, and he was really connected to it. So I think this is a film for everyone. And that's a big win. That's a big win.
And that's what Pixar do so well, right? It's we make movies for everyone. You know, we don't make kids movies, we don't make adult movies, we make movies for the family. And I think that like the sequences in New York for me were like, this is where this is my interest, this is right up my alley. And I think the sequences that we see in the other places, given their kind of like color and the people that we're introduced to there, are very much things I think kids are going to enjoy and take away from. Like, that is probably the parts that they would enjoy a lot more. And as for the little like bean counter, which is just amazing, the accountant that's in it, it's just incredible. And I think I very briefly looked. I think that is the actor in Ragnarok who kind of plays Jeff Goldblum's she's like right hand woman, you know, like she's like the warrior that I think she's worked with Taika Waititi and stuff before, and like you can tell as well as that sense of humor in there. It's very much aligned with what Taika Waititi would do.
So this is Pixar's Soul, directed by Pete Docter, the same director who did one of the best Pixar movies, Inside Out.
Music is all I think about. From the moment I wake up in the morning to the moment I fall asleep at night, I was born to play. It's my reason for living. Hello? What the? What? Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness! Help! I'm not done! Holy! Oh my goodness!
So before we jump onto number 1, I'm gonna quickly go back and just say my number 10 was Emma, Pablo Larraín. Number 9 was Painter and a Thief, Benjamin Ree. Benjamin Ree is a director. Number 8, Possessor, Brandon Cronenberg directed this one. His House, directed by Remy Weeks. And number 6, Rocks, Sarah Gavron. Number 5, Saint Maud, Rose Glass. Number 4, St. Francis, Alex Thompson. Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always as number 3, directed by Eliza Hittman. And number 2, Parasite, Bong Joon-ho. What's your list? Just remind us very quickly.
Number 10, Uncut Gems. 9, Parasite.
There you go.
8, Invisible Man. 7, The Five Bloods. Number 6, Mank. Tenet. 1917. Trial of Chicago 7. And number 2 was Soul.
So we actually overlap only on one film.
Yeah.
Because I don't think my number 1 is your number 1.
Absolutely not. You know what mine is. I have no idea what yours is right now.
This is a movie that I've seen in Cannes 2019, but since it released in the UK on Mubi, I watched it maybe 3 times, and every time it affects me the same way. So, I probably told you that story. I'm going to briefly say that I hate costume movies, period dramas, anything like this. Stay away, keep away. I fucking hate it. And there I am, sitting in the theater, watching a period drama in French and crying like a baby and just thinking, what the hell is happening? This is a film about a painter that goes to paint a portrait of this girl that's gonna be married, and she doesn't want to pose for the poster for that painting, and she needs to pretend that she's not a painter. She's just kind of walking with her, and then she starts observing her, and from that observation she tries to make a portrait of her, but something kind of happens between them. This is Portrait of a Lady on Fire, directed by Céline Sciamma. The film that is about a women gaze, about how we look on women. This is a film that's set in 18th century, but it's so modern in the way it depicts women and the way that we think about women. I think not that much has changed, to be honest. She's the main character, 2 main characters. The one that played by Adele Hanel, she doesn't want to be owned by someone. She doesn't want to be owned, doesn't want to be a painting on the wall. That's why she doesn't want to be painted, right? There's some beautiful thought about it. And Naomi Mallet, who she plays the woman that paints, she tries to make it in the men's world that, to be a painter, you have to be a man. And those 2 women kind of get together. There's also, I don't know what's happening. In my 5 list, there is another story of abortion. This is another.
Yeah, yours is very dire. I'm over here being like, spectacle!
Yeah,
there's
and
guns
me being,
and reverse
my
cars,
God.
And there's the...
But, Conor, I think that's great that we have such a different lists, because the movie has, like movies in general, film, cinema has so many faces, and we just showing completely different faces of how the movies can be, how can they influence you. There is a scene towards the end of the film that this movie has 3 endings, and first ending makes you kind of tear up and makes you surprised and makes you astonished. The second ending makes you a little bit smile. The third ending makes you weep like a baby. And I love when the movie does that to you, when you care for people enough to feel what they're feeling. And this is a beautiful, beautiful way for cinema to be this mechanism that learns you empathy towards other people. I think many people should watch Portrait of the Lady on Fire. I know they will not, but if there is one person listening to our podcast that will say, I'm going to give this a shot, I think my job is done.
Vous allez devoir la peindre sans qu'elle le sache. Il pense que vous êtes une compagne de promenade pour quelques jours.
Que savez-vous de mon futur mariage?
Rien.
C'est tout ce que j'en sais aussi. Quand allez-vous vous marier?
Je ne sais pas si je vais me marier.
C'est parce que vous pouvez choisir que vous ne me comprenez pas.
Je vous comprends.
So that's my number 1. Conor, go ahead with yours, and I'm gonna cry now. Not because of the movie, but because of your choice.
Oh, Rado. I finished talking about Soul talking about my main man Taika Waititi. And
I knew that.
I started off the episode actually talking about Jojo Rabbit, initially released in 2019 and then released released in 2019 maybe in the US and for all of the sort of kind of could qualify for a lot of the sort of like end of year award shows and stuff like that there, right? But then kind of properly released in very early 2020. And again, I am obviously a big fan of Taika Waititi. I really, really enjoy his stuff. Both from What We Do in the Shadows and Thor Ragnarok kind of being a big introduction. Kind of not introduction to him for me, but like that was the point where I was like, oh, I really, really like what this guy does. I love his tone. I love what he tries to capture. And I think this was like peak Taika Waititi doing a movie like this. So it is about not just the Nazis in World War II, but children Nazis, like kind of like Hitler Youth. So a typically serious and dark topic, and yet he manages to still approach it with that like wicked sense of humor that he has. Because he is so sharp with his humor, and it's not just like his ability to write a script that's funny, but it's if you ever just watch him being interviewed or on set or anything like that, he is just naturally a very, very funny person and sees things in it through a very particular sort of prism, and I think that all came together so well in Jojo Rabbit, because it is this what should be a dark and heavy topic, and there are dark and heavy sequences in this movie. They're very sad sequences in this movie, but yet it somehow manages to still be a very positive and happy and joyful and funny movie with multiple sequences in it that are laugh out loud. And it still manages to be a story of, you know, like of love as well, and like what it means to like truly love someone or idolize someone. On the other hand, Scarlett Johansson is incredible in it. I absolutely loved her in this movie. All of the child actors are brilliant, even when they're not. Jojo's friend in it, he's not the best actor in the world, but he's so charming that you feel like Taika Waititi knew this. Like, he knows that he's not the best, but he's just perfect for the role, because the way he delivers lines is so warming and charming, and him and Jojo are such good friends in it. And like when they greet each other for the first time after seeing each other, because Jojo he's not able to make the military cut, whereas his friend they meet each other for the first time and they give each other like this big hug, like they are just best friends and they are children. And his delivery of lines around like kind of being a bit, you know, he mentions about Hitler like blowing his brains out, you know, again, what should be a very like horrible and dark thing, he just manages to make it funny. And I think it's just I just thoroughly enjoy Jojo Rabbit so much. And again, such a timely movie in so many ways as well, as we like again with through 2020, and all that we kind of seen around the world and in the US in particular, in the years leading up to it. So it's about 4 years ago. It felt like just a very appropriate story to tell, where it was talking about Nazis, but yet not in no way, shape, or form was doing anything to glorify them. As a matter of fact, it was repeatedly and unabashedly like making fun of like this sort of fascism and Nazism and stuff like that. It just repeatedly does it. And I know you didn't like this film for maybe reasons like that, but I just adored Jojo Rabbit, because I just think that it was, for me, it was telling this simple, small story in this grand, big setting, in this grand, big historical event with a lot of horrible things around it and being told about it, and yet it's done in such a lighthearted and funny way without ever feeling disrespectful. And I think that's easier said than it is done, and I think that Waititi did an amazing job of it. So Jojo Rabbit, go watch it.
Quel macho, Jojo. You're a top man. Prepare to leave the house.
Today, you boys will be involved in such activities as war games, ambush techniques, and blowing stuff up.
I don't think I can do this.
Was? Of course you can.
Aber dann kamst du. When I was your age, I had an imaginary friend. Got me in so much trouble.
Kids, it's time to burn some books.
You're growing up too fast. 10-year-olds shouldn't be celebrating war and talking politics.
Heil Hitler. I wish more of our young boys had your blind fanaticism.
Did you know Jews can read each other's minds? But how would you know if you saw one? They could look just like us.
Conor's number one, Jojo Rabbit, directed by Taika Waititi himself. And Taika Waititi plays Hitler. Yeah,
exactly.
Spoiler there. Conor, I wanted to say something, and you actually put it there very nicely. I could have been ugly and just say something, about your choices, but I respect it. I really respect it. And what I'm gonna do, I will rewatch Jojo Rabbit.
Do it
for the sheer respect I have for you.
Thank you. That's very much appreciated.
As a person,
I'll watch
and as my co-host of our podcast. But you have to promise me something as well.
Yes, I'll watch the trailer for yours as well.
No, don't watch the trailer. Just watch Portrait of the Lady on Fire. I'm actually going to link you. I'm going to send you a link. You can watch it for free.
Oh, wow.
So let's do this, and maybe we can just kind of sit down and in one of the episodes during coming lazy weeks of the lockdown and to discuss our choices. Number one. And this is the year of 2020 in a nutshell by Conor and by Rado. The movies, we have like almost 20 movies because we have only one overlapping title. Very, very different choices there. Yeah. And I'm super happy with that. So stay with us until the post-credit scene when we're going to briefly discuss what's going to happen in 2021. And for now, thank you for listening. And if you enjoyed this podcast, just click the recommend the like button, whatever the button is. I don't know. You can see it on your podcast of choice. Give us 5 stars on Apple Podcast. We definitely deserve it. Yes, we do. Our theme music is by Scott Holmes, and you can find more of his work at scottholmesmusic.com. Artwork for the podcast has been created by Conor Boyle, and the episode was edited by myself. Find us online on Twitter at TheBlockBusters, at Rado Folta, at DesignConor, and our lists of best films will be available at TheBlockBusters on Letterboxd, and I will link it in our show notes.
Yes.
So we'll hear you will hear us in few seconds. Don't go away. Join us in the next episode when we're going to be discussing TV shows of 2020.
Like that, he's gone.
So this is our after show, quick post-credit scene, us from Marvel Universe, taken out from Marvel Universe MCU. And talking about the MCU, 2021 is going to bring us finally some movies. What do you think, Conor?
I am skeptical. I've been
with what's happening
here, and I'm just looking at some of these, let's say dates that are written in pencil, and I am not so sure that pencil is going to. I think they'll be glad they wrote it in pencil because. Yeah. The big films this year, 2021, like kind of big titles. Kingsman in March. That's a prequel to Kingsman. I don't know, like Kings. That it's King apostrophe S man, not Kingsman as a one word. Yep.
And this is Matthew Vaughn's a film with. Great cast in there. That's a big film. We have in April No Time to Die. So now we should actually place bets whether it's going to be April 2021 or is it going to be November 2021, because that is actually one of the possibilities. I would want to go back to the cinema like on a normal scale when we can just watch movies like normal people. But whether it's going to happen. The Quiet Place as well, it's predicted to open this year, no?
Yeah, I think The Quiet Place is maybe one of the ones that they end up just going, like, what are we keeping this for any longer, right? Let's just put it out there.
Yeah. Let people watch it. That was meant to be one of the films that I meant to watch last year, to go to like a special screening preview. Still have a ticket for it. It. Oh God. What else is there? So in May we have Black Widow. You are looking forward that this is going to be released.
I think,
right?
but at this point, I think Disney are absolutely committed to a theatrical release for Black Widow, and we spoke about that on one of our last episodes as we kind of covered the Disney Investor Day news. And I'm sure that like even if it didn't release this year, they would just happily kick it down the line until the year after. But the same thing goes here for Shang-Chi in July. Like, I just don't see it happening. Not like, again, looking at what's happening in the US as we record this evening, versus then how poor their sort of vaccine rollout has been as well. And as I mentioned in one of our previous episodes, like, so much of this theatrical release window is based on simply whether or not the US has got their affairs in order, right? Because they, like, cinemas can kind of open here and they've done so safely, and it's just like, but the studios just don't want to do it. They paid the price, so they look at like they've paid the price for doing it with Tenet. So I just don't see a lot of these movies coming. So what else was there? That was May. May was also meant to have Godzilla versus Kong and Fast and Furious 9. Who cares
about that? Yeah, Fast and Furious. I'm looking forward to Top Gun Maverick.
Oh yeah.
And
Minions
couple of
2.
other things. It's actually Minions 2. Oh yeah.
Well, it is actually surprising that Minions 2 they just haven't confirmed it already as a straight to digital. I imagine that will change. Jungle Cruise, that's a rock movie. That'll be a theatrical release, I'm sure. Uncharted with Tom Holland, absolutely no chance that's being July. Not a chance in hell. It hasn't they've only been shooting it recently as well. Like never happening.
Yeah, this is all pencil, so this might be 2022.
Yeah.
We have October for Dune. Dune is ready, so Dune is actually gonna come out. Yeah. Whatever's gonna happen, whether we're gonna have HBO Max in the UK or not, it's gonna come out somehow. Eternals in November. Mission Impossible 7. This might be delayed as well because they were still shooting the film, right?
Yeah, they were. Famously now, they were shooting it in London.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Tom Cruise.
Wow. Yeah. And we have in December Spider-Man 3, we still don't know what the title is going to be, and Matrix 4. Kind of interesting stuff. But this is the big titles, but, I kind of put a few more other films in there. Nomadland, Chloe Zhao, one of the best films of, definitely the best film of Venice Film Festival. That's gonna be in February, and that's gonna come out 100%. It's gonna be probably streaming this way, and you definitely need to watch it. Another Round, Thomas Vinterberg's film with Mads Mikkelsen, which I enjoyed so much, and a lot of people are actually talking about. If you look on the lists of people who've seen the films, and this was released in the US, so this is already on the list of best of 2020, but not been released in the UK, so we're not discussing it. But keep an eye out because it's a big film. They're coming, and I kind of look forward to see Sound of Metal with Riz Ahmed. This is about the guy who's a drummer, metal drummer, and he's losing his hearing. Interesting, a lot of interesting stuff.
Big fan.
They're kind of in between those big releases. Candyman, for example, as the new version of the classic horror movie from the 80s and as the 90s. So some of that era.
Yeah, 90s, early 90s, I think.
Yeah. Hopefully we go back to the cinema sooner than later, but who knows? But I will keep watching movies, Conor. I will keep watching.
Given the numbers you told me, I don't doubt it.